We were talking about the CBD.
Okay.
And I want to go back to that. I'm handing you State's Exhibit 87. Do you recognize what's in this photo?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Is
yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's my case.
Okay. And is this truly and accurately reflected in the manner you gave it to Chloe
Yeah,
Driver?
it's in a very, very small glass jar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I'm going to tender State's 87.
Any objection? It's admitted.
All right. All right. And is this the CBD that we're referencing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And was this the same sample of CBD that you had given to your
My dad's cousin.
dad's cousin,
Yeah.
and that you had used yourself?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
And then you just gave the remainder to.
I just had some with me that I was taking for my
Okay.
shoulder issues, for my shoulder pain, and
Alright.
that's the jar that I had that I was just using personally. I had purchased this a year before,
Okay.
and I still had some left over, and I just gave the rest of what I had to them after they considered it. Like, I offered it, and they considered it, and like the next day they were like, yeah, we'll try it, because it was free.
Okay.
Instead of spending all their money, I just gave it to them.
All right. So
you know.
she had ordered CBD offline,
Right.
and then you offered this, and they talked about it and accepted it.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of administration of this, do you just eat it? How does that
Orally,
work?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And were you a part of the discussions surrounding the CBD or the use of CBD?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I found out that they had come to like an agreement, about using CBD to try to help Kawani to find some, without using pharmaceuticals. It seemed like a much softer and more organic approach to some kind of chemical alleviation for her lapses in what we will call sanity, if you will.
Was she interested in that approach?
Yes, she was.
Do you have any knowledge about her ever being involuntarily forced to take CBD?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, it was her who ordered it. I
Okay.
mean, she had to convince Z to let her do that.
She had to convince Z to let her take
Yeah,
CBD.
because it's like, he was trying to do this organically and like have her heal on her own.
Okay.
Because there was like I say, she kept coming back into reality or whatever you're gonna call it, back into a place of mental clarity where she would apologize and not remember what she did, but he found it significant that she was, because it's not like she was like clinical, it's not like she was like that all the time. This was just like something that had developed. Then I say because of her past and postpartum, and who knows what else was contributing to like these eruptions, and he was trying to heal her organically. So yeah, she had convinced him to allow her to use CBD, and he agreed.
Okay.
As an alternative, as a more organic and softer alternative to pharmaceuticals.
Okay. And you just used the expression, she wasn't like that all the time.
I mean, where she was like losing. I was just trying to make a clear and distinct difference between the woman who was a loving mother and the woman who would violently attack her husband.
Okay.
And the other women.
When she was her normal self, that was
Yeah.
with Z for years.
Yes.
Have you ever described her as being a Spitfire?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was she strong-willed and spirited?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said earlier that she asked you if you were an asshole who liked to eat animals. Was that?
Yeah, I mean,
demonstrative
she's kind of
her
snipey
personality?
sometimes, but that's not like, she wasn't like aggressive or violent. She was just kind of like stern, I guess you could say, and like curt and to the point.
Okay.
You
Was
know.
she? Did she speak her mind?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. And amongst the three wives, who was the clear leader of the three?
Kawani, I feel like, but they were all like, I feel like Kawani was like the more like the more of the leader, I guess you could say. But those other girls, they were very vocal. Like, I mean, there was like all this interaction between them. It's not like Kawani was like commanding authority or or that she was like in charge of the other women. Let's not put it like that. It's not like she was like the boss over them or anything. But it was very clear that she was like the more like headstrong and like more iron-willed of the three, I guess you could say.
Did she like things her way?
I mean, doesn't everyone? It's like no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't
Okay.
say that Kawani was like that. Like she's like has to have it her way kind of girl.
Was she afraid to speak her mind?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, that's like very much the opposite of that.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the traveling from North Carolina to Florida.
Sure.
And you indicated that there was an intention to.
We were moving. You're talking about December the 8th.
Yes.
Well,
but I
yeah.
want to talk about where you stopped en route.
Totally.
Do you have any knowledge about going to Chloe Driver's parents' house?
We did go to Kawani's parents. on
Okay.
it was the night before that.
December the 7th?
I'm pretty sure it was the 7th, or maybe it was the 6th. Like I say, these, you're talking about like the differential between a day that I'm trying to remember. Was it the 6th or the 7th of 2020, 4 years ago? I can't remember.
Okay.
But it was not the 8th, because that's the day that we were traveling and Nimsy died.
And in terms of who was traveling and how many vehicles you had, what did that look like?
It was my van, and it was the U-Haul, and it was their SUV, I think. My head is itching. I can't remember if it was their SUV or their car, but I was driving the U-Haul, and one of the girls, I think Shayla, was driving my van, and then Z was riding with Kawani and Nimsy in the SUV. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember that.
And what about Gami?
I think she was with one of the others.
Okay.
Like these are details that escape me.
Okay.
But
there were multiple vehicles.
Yeah, we were in. It was. I know that my van was there.
Okay.
And I was driving the U-Haul.
Okay.
So, and then there was at least one more car. Maybe they had both cars. I can't remember this.
Okay. So 3 or 4 vehicles.
3 or
total?
4 vehicles. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know that Z and Kawani and Nimsy were all in one car?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And you drove the U-Haul by yourself?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did all of those vehicles go to Eric and Renee Driver's house on the way?
Yeah, they did actually. We parked in the. They live in like a condo duplex type townhouse thing, and we drove the U-Haul up the hill to their house to load up all the Kawani stuff, and we left all the other cars in the visitor parking by the pool at the entrance.
Okay.
And Shaylee took a nap in my van.
All right.
while they were there.
And what was the purpose for stopping at Eric and Renee Driver's house?
To get the rest of Kawani's stuff so they could move to Florida, because they had found a place to live and be stationary and establish some kind of grounding, which she initiated this sequence, and we all supported that to try to help her find a place to heal, where she could really like be still and not have to deal with like all the stressors from the outside world. The San Torres thing was obviously hugely traumatic to everyone, and so she wanted to find a place to live, and they found a place in Florida.
Did what stuff were you all retrieving from her parents' house?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I just pulled the U-Haul up and
Okay.
they loaded it up. I didn't even like.
Okay.
I have no idea. I would say like personal belongings, probably like things that she needed.
And do you know if her
Clothes.
parents were there and they
They were
interacted
there.
with her?
They were there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was the first time that was another time when I met Eric Driver. He came outside and I saw Kyle Driver.
Who's Kyle?
Kyle's brother.
Her brother. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And anything eventful happened while you were at the driver's house?
Nope. It's pretty smooth. We just
How was
rolled up.
Kawani acting?
She was actually, by this point she had become like her, even in her normal self, she was kind of like, she's like really dealing with a lot of like mental health issues,
Okay.
and it was really starting to like drive her down.
You described her earlier as like looking sad. Is
Sad.
that- okay.
Yeah, just like, like really needing to get like that, like needing some kind of like something, like the stable place in Florida where they could go, and she was really looking forward to that, and everybody was,
Okay.
like that was.
Do you know who made the decision to go to the driver's house to get Kawani's things? Was that something that she
Gosh, I don't
requested?
know.
You don't know? Okay, that's fine. How long were you all at the driver's residence?
Probably like an hour and a half or so.
Okay. All right.
We just stopped in, picked up stuff. She had just been there after Thanksgiving, and then had come back to Z and her family, and with her sisters and her baby, and they had like, things had like mended, and they were going to Florida, and Eric and Renee opened their house up, and Z was there talking to Eric. Like it was just like, this is all after that. This was December the 6th, right before Nimsy died.
Okay, so December the 6th, in interactions between Z and Kawani and her parents and her brothers there, did you observe anything that was abnormal?
Not at all.
Tension, conflict, anything like that?
Actually, not at all. Like
Okay.
it was just smooth.
All right.
Like Eric and Renee were, they were there. They're like, here, they opened their home. Z was talking to Eric.
Mm-hmm.
He went inside, gathered their stuff with Kawani, and loaded it into the U-Haul.
At that time, was Kawani excited about going to Florida?
They were all very like eager to get to Florida, or like, excited, I guess.
Okay.
As excited as a person who's like sad like that could be, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, they were
Okay.
they were all like ready to get to Florida and be stable, and they wanted to have a garden. She was talking about having a garden and growing food and doing, some self-healing meditations and being stable and being away from stressors of the world, like, just, they had found a spot in the country, that was kind of like a way, to where, she wouldn't have as many triggers to go into these.
Those were the things that she expressed she wanted?
Yeah,
A
totally.
garden and land and to
That's
be out
it.
in the country?
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Was Nimsy with her and Z in the group whenever they were there with
Yeah.
Eric and Renee Driver?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said you believe that was either the 6th or the 7th?
The 6th or the 7th, yes.
Okay. And then I want to talk about the 8th. You all
Yeah.
went to Jerry's. Did you know Jerry already?
Yeah, I know Jerry.
Okay.
I'd been to Jerry's house a couple times before. I'd spoken to him on the phone. It's kind of like one of those situations with Z. Like I met Jerry. Jerry's a really interesting guy. He's intelligent, and he does like a podcast talk show that's like really, it's like an interesting thing that he does. And so I had spoken to Jerry for hours on the phone. Like I just called him up just to chat, like I do with people that I meet that I'm interested in. Kind of the same thing when I first met Z, just the same thing. Like I met Jerry, I liked him, I still like Jerry, and so yeah, I knew Jerry. Yes.
Okay.
Just trying to give you just descriptive details into our.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So you were familiar with his home. You come to Cherokee County with everybody we've already discussed, right?
Yes, on
Okay.
the 8th.
On the
And I
8th.
had been there before several times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any idea what time you arrived at the house?
Sometime in the afternoon, I'd say like, gosh, I don't know what time that was. Like, what time was that? Maybe like noon or
Okay.
11? Gosh, like I said, these are, because we had woken up early that morning and gone to the 12 tribes.
And what is the 12 tribes?
12 tribes is like a quasi-Jewish, quasi-Christian culture of individuals who, they have like a long-standing foundation of devotees, and they have like delis and stuff like that, and they have like a minha, where they sing and dance in the morning and stuff like that. And
So you all went there that morning?
we went there that morning.
Okay. And did Kuwani participate in that?
Well, we were all there. I mean, participate. We just sat there,
You said there was singing and dancing.
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff.
she wasn't doing that. Neither did we.
Okay.
But yeah,
What were you all doing?
just sitting there.
Okay. Were you
Yeah.
communicating?
We spoke to each other, or yeah, of course.
Okay.
I mean,
Anything about her behavior on that day at 12 tribes was she normal, Kuwani?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Was she in a bad mood, good spirits, just
It seemed like she was pretty normal. Like I say, she was pretty disheartened overall in general at that point, like pretty worn down and just tired of dealing with the mental illness that was plaguing her. I'll call it that.
Okay.
But during the 12 tribes, she was, just normal Kawani. She did have an episode, an outburst at Whole Foods later that day, where she would just have panic attacks and start screaming and, she was pretty much in the car while that was happening. I knew it was happening, but I didn't really see it.
Okay.
Like she had gotten like overstimulated on the road or something like that.
okay.
And some kind of trigger.
Were you
something-
interviewed by law enforcement in this case back in December?
Yeah, I was that day. That's the
Okay.
only
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And is it fair to say that everybody kind of described her as acting like herself on the 8th?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that she was having like a little bit of a freak out,
Mm-hmm.
episode in the car. But that was it at Whole Foods.
When you say
Like,
freak out episode,
Yes.
in the context of what we've already discussed about her being a little bit of a spitfire and speaking her mind, when you say freak out episode,
I'm talking about like on a whole nother level but go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
is it something you observed? The
What do you
freak
mean?
out episode you're talking about, did you see that?
On the 8th?
Yes.
Actually, I knew it was happening. I knew that she was having a hard time because Z was just like, Z got out of the car and he was like, Kawani's like needs some space right now.
Okay.
But no, I didn't actually witness that.
Okay, so let's just talk about the stuff you actually saw.
Okay.
There was an incident with her in the car on that day where he said she needs some space.
Right, and so
Okay.
I just went into Whole Foods by myself, and
Okay.
I needed some food. So I went into Whole Foods, got some food, came back out, got in the car, and then we took back on the road to Jerry's.
Okay, and did he give her some space whenever he said she needs some space? Did everybody give her some space?
Oh no, I think he was like doing what he normally does and talking to her and trying to like guiding her back to
Calming her down?
trying to get her to come back to him, in like a
Okay.
place of like normalcy, like
Okay.
wholeness.
You don't know what that conflict was about? You
No.
didn't see her?
No, I
Okay.
don't. But I mean, so I could only make assumptions.
Okay, we don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
So on the 8th, when you get to Jerry's house, you said it was around the noontime hour. There's at least 3 or 4 cars and the group of you. What happened when you got there? Where did all of the women go?
Okay, so everybody went into the house,
Mm-hmm.
except for me. I stayed out in my van and I took a nap.
Okay. And did you assist in moving any of the stuff out of the house?
No, I did not.
Okay. And at what point did you wake up from your nap?
I don't know what time that was.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Is there anything that awoke you?
Sometime, yeah, Z woke me.
Okay. And
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Well, I was sleeping in my van, and Z was like, "Hey, I got all this stuff," because I wanted to take a nap, and he was cool with that, and he was loading up all of his stuff, and he got all of his stuff loaded, and he said, "Hey, go ahead and wake up," and I woke up, and I got up, and I was standing in the driveway, and Jerry was in the garage, and Shaylee and Gamliana and I were all standing in the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what happened next?
I heard Z scream.
Okay. And
Like
what did
this.
you hear him scream?
No, just like this, like at the like this terrified, painful scream, like just like a scream, like it was like shocking, you know, like Z doesn't really scream like that. That's the only time I've ever heard him express any sound that even closely resembled that. It was
Is he typically quiet?
No, he just doesn't, you know, I mean, the trauma, the pain, it was just a scream of utter, just so much pain was in his voice. And so I didn't even know what had happened. I had no idea what had happened. But I was outside and I told Gami, I was like, you need to call 911 right now. And so she started calling 911 and I ran inside the house. Shayla was already running back in the house and so did Jerry when we heard him scream like that. This is how I remember. Maybe Jerry wasn't standing outside. I feel like these details are probably more or less irrelevant, but at one point Jerry was standing outside. I don't know if Jerry was still in the garage right there at the house when I heard Z scream, but Gami and I definitely were. And I told her to call the cops.
Okay.
To call 911 because something was definitely wrong. Like I had no idea what had happened, but it was a scream of pain and like something like bad, you know, like.
You previously testified that you're not a call the cops kind of guy, and you're obviously sitting here wearing orange.
That's
so,
right.
Tell me what about what you heard made your first instinct be call 911?
You know, I can't really remember. I don't remember. I just remember hearing the scream and perhaps like, I can't even remember what happened in between there. It's like, it's been so long. It's like, I don't know exactly what the sequence of events was, but something compelled me. I said, Gami, you need to call 911 right now. And she did.
Okay.
And I ran inside and then I ran upstairs because that's where the scream was coming from. And then I walked into this like really horrible thing.
Okay. What happened when you walked into the room?
I walked into the room and there was blood everywhere. And Z was, I'm gonna talk through this one. Z was trying to give Nimsy like mouth to mouth. Like she had obviously had some laceration wounds to her neck and there was like blood everywhere. And Kawani was laying on the ground and she had tried to kill herself by stabbing herself in the chest and in the throat. And she was bleeding profusely. And so I was just went into shock, basically. Like I have very little or no experience, especially with a child. Like, I mean, I've witnessed a couple things, but not like this. And so Z's like giving his daughter mouth to mouth, trying to like breathe some life back into her, and she's like gurgling her last breath, and Kawani's laying on the floor, bleeding profusely.
Was Nimsy still alive when you went into the room?
She was on her way out.
Okay.
Like she was gurgling, but she wasn't moving, and she looked very not alive.
Okay. And tell me about your interaction with Chloe. Kawani, sorry.
I went to the ground and Z said, keep pressure on the wounds. And so I did. I went down and I kept pressure on the wounds and I tried to just stop them from bleeding. I was using my sweatshirt and my hands to put pressure on the wound that was on her chest and on her neck until the paramedics got there.
Okay. And how was Kawani reacting to you? Was she saying anything or doing anything?
She was saying that she wanted to see Nimsy one more time, and she was actually trying to push me away. She was, you know what, earlier I said there was only one time when I touched Kawani, but that was the second time, when I was trying to save her life. I was holding pressure on the wound. She had blood all over her hands, and she was pushing my face away, telling me, stop, I'm supposed to die, and I wanted to see, and then she was like trying to lean up to see Nimsy one more time, but I held her down because I thought that, you know, I just didn't want her to lose any more blood because there was blood everywhere and all over me and all over our clothes and all over the floor and the bed. It was like a massacre. And I just wanted to try to save her life. So I held her down and kept pressure on the wounds for probably about 2 minutes because the paramedics came really fast.
Okay. So she told you to stop. She tried to push you away.
Yeah.
She said, I'm supposed to die, and that she wanted to see Nimsy one last time.
Yes.
Is that what you recall?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that you were attempting to save her life and that he was attempting to save Hannah's life.
Yeah, he was.
Did you care about Kawani and Hannah?
Of course.
Do you still care about them?
Yes.
Okay. And after this happened, did you maintain a relationship with Kawani?
Actually, yeah.
After she was arrested, did you all continue to communicate with her?
Yeah, she called from inside jail a lot.
Okay.
And we had a chance to speak a couple times. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know for how long she maintained a relationship with you and Z and the other women after she was arrested for murdering Hannah?
Gosh, I can't remember. I have no idea.
Okay.
A while, more than a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you a part of some of those phone conversations?
I was, yeah.
And what was the tone of those phone conversations?
Pretty, like, mellow, really. Like, just, pretty, just, you know, she's in jail, and we were talking to her and just reminding her that we love her and that, even though this was like a horrible thing, and we forgive her, and we know that wasn't her that did that. You know, we still love her and care about her, and we forgive her for that because we know that she would never do that.
And did she continue to express love for all of you?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And have you maintained contact and stayed in contact with Z?
Yeah.
Okay. And have you all discussed that, you still care about Kiwani and you don't want anything bad to happen to her?
That's right.
Okay. And have you discussed that it is your desire that she go to a mental hospital and not be in state custody?
I mean, honestly, when it comes to that, I feel like my opinion is that this woman has suffered enough, with all of her, I can imagine having to deal with knowing that something that you lost control of your own mind to the point where you killed your own daughter. Like, women don't kill their babies. Like, that's really rare, and when you do see it, it's usually a case of like the child is unwanted. That's not what this was. This was not an unwanted child. This was some kind of deep thing being expressed through Kiwani that started, like I say, the trauma that fractured her, I think, began when she was a child. And Z did what he could to help her with that, and so did all of us, and it ended up being this really horrific thing. And I do think that basically, like, I know that, I just don't think that prison is the place for her. No, I don't.
Okay.
I think that I think that she's just gonna degrade, and these prisons are horrible, and they're just like.
Have you stated previously that you think she suffered enough and that you all believe she needs to be free in society?
That's a question mark. Like, free in society, I think that she should be. I think that it should be acknowledged that in the term of what we'll call, not guilty due to insanity. It's like you hear about people using this as a cop-out plea, and this is actually like one real one.
Okay.
And
we've discussed that you don't know what the law in Georgia is, right?
I don't. I'm not trying. I'm just trying to speak as as much familiarity with it as I have.
And my question is whether you have stated that you think she suffered enough and that she should be free.
Okay, I think that she has suffered enough. Do I think that she needs to be immediately free? I don't know. Maybe. I think that she could be. I don't think that she's a harm to anyone. I don't think that she's a harm to society, and I don't think that she's a harm to herself. But maybe she is. Maybe she does need to be institutionalized. I think that should be determined by a professional.
When's the last time you spoke to her?
Gosh, it was a while ago, like a couple years ago. I don't know. Do I personally feel like Kiwani should be free? Yeah, but maybe not. But maybe I'm wrong. Like I say, I think that should be. I do personally feel that.
Okay.
And you have to understand, like, I have zero toleration for abuse of children. I think that the laws aren't strict enough on those who abuse children and individuals. If it is so the case that Kiwani was abused as a child, then her abusers should be brought to justice. And I don't think there should be a statute of limitations on that.
Did you ever tell Detective Cruz in the investigation of this case that woman chose to do what she did today? She took those actions. She made those choices.
I don't remember saying that. No.
You don't remember saying that?
No.
And the person that stabbed Nimsy to death, do you see her in this courtroom?
From what I understand, I didn't see her do it, but Kiwani's sitting right here in this room.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her.
Over here?
Yep, that's her.
I don't have any other questions at this time.
All right, cross-examination.
Yeah, just making sure it's not a password that needs to do this. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, Mr. Spillers.
Hey.
Nice to talk to you again. You and I first spoke, I think that was Friday or Saturday while you were at the jail.
Yeah.
By Zoom call, is that correct?
Yeah, we sure did.
Other than that conversation, we've never talked before.
No, we have not.
You've never reached out to us to try to speak to us in any way about this case.
Actually, I have.
Did you?
Yeah, I've called several times. I've called your office. I've left messages for you
Okay.
over the past few months.
While you were in custody?
Yeah, I was in custody.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Apologize if I didn't get those messages.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I probably called you half a dozen times. I've left messages with your secretary. I was told that you were the person that I needed, the individual that I needed to talk to probably like 4 months ago. I've been locked up since July, and I have called you many times trying to get in touch with you to reach out and
Okay.
just let you know that I'm here to get to speak my perspective.
okay. But before Saturday, or when we talked by Zoom
No,
at the jail,
this
we
is
had
the
never
first time we've
spoken
spoken.
before.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. We had never talked at one point about what your anticipated testimony was going to be today. Before
Absolutely
Saturday.
not. No, your questions for me on Saturday are mostly in the nature of my relationship with the group. We only talked for 30 minutes.
Right.
I mean, I've been on stand now for 2.5 hours.
Yes, sir.
You know?
Yes,
So,
sir. And I am going to talk a little bit more about your relationship to the group, just to flesh some of that out. Okay.
Let's do it.
But I'm going to start with December the 8th.
Okay.
I know that's a tough day for you. I've seen the emotion on your face about what happened that day.
I care deeply about Kawani
Yeah.
and that baby too.
Yeah. I just want to understand a couple of things. When you came into the room at first, Z was already in the room, right?
Yes, he was.
And when you came in, Z was attempting to resuscitate and deal with Hannah, correct?
Yes.
When you first approached Kawani, I'm gonna call her Kawani because that's what you call her. I'm
Sure.
gonna try to keep that consistent. When you first approached her, was the knife still in her chest,
No.
or was she holding that in her hand, or
It was on the
where
floor.
was the knife?
It was on the floor.
Okay, so the knife was already on the floor beside her.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything to touch or move that knife when you walked in, when you came into the room.
Nope.
Okay. And you said that she was saying that she wanted to see her baby. She was moving up to see Nimsy, correct?
Yes.
And she said to you, "I'm supposed to die. I'm supposed to die." That's what she was telling you.
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall when she was laying there on the floor? Do you recall her reaching out to Nimsy with her right hand?
It's really hard to know. I don't. I remember her like pushing my face away, like she was trying to get me to stop. Like she like wanted me to stop trying to like put pressure on the wounds. You know.
Was she also trying to get to the child? Did you think?
No, I don't even think she could get up at that point. Like she said very clearly, I can't even see. Like she says, I can barely move, I can't see. I would just want to see her one last time. And I told her she needed to be still because she's bleeding profusely and the EMS people need to get here.
Okay. I'm not going to make you watch the body cam videos from the officers that came into the scene. The jury's already seen those in this
Okay.
case. If I tell you that one of the prior officers in this case testified that Kawani was reaching out and holding Nimsy's hand, do you have any reason to dispute that that could have happened that morning?
Well, it couldn't have been that she was touching her because there's too much distance between them.
Okay.
Like there was too much distance there.
Okay.
Like the baby was on the bed and Z was trying to like breathe into her to try, because she was gurgling blood and there was blood everywhere. And
But if an officer says that he saw that, you don't have any reason to dispute what that officer
I
said.
will dispute that.
Okay.
I'll 100% dispute that.
Okay. Have you ever seen the body cam video in this case?
No, I haven't.
Okay. All right. Let me get you back to.
So you're saying, let's be clear one more time. You're saying that Kawani's body was touching Nimsy's body, and that you're saying that if an officer said that, would I dispute it?
I'm not asking you if their bodies were touching each other. I'm asking if you recall her reaching out and touching her with her arm, with her right hand.
Yes, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying, touching the baby with her hand.
Yeah.
No, that's impossible. There was too much distance between them.
Okay. All right.
There's no way that she could have been touching the baby.
Okay. Now, you did say in response to some questions there by Ms. Gropper that she was asking you about what you thought should happen to Kawani from this case.
Sure.
You understand that what your belief is about that doesn't truly mean a lot. The jury gets to decide that, correct?
Sure, but I mean, I feel like it's a fair question.
Sure. Because you saw her consistently for about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And you have testified to us pretty extensively about a significant change in her mental state from when you first met her in April or May of 2020 until December of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Your testimony is, and I think I wrote this down right, you know that wasn't her that did that. You know that wasn't Chloe Driver that did this, right?
Yes.
You know that because everything that you ever saw her do with that child was what you would expect for a loving mother, right? You know that because of what you saw in that child's eyes and face when that child saw her mother, right?
Yes.
You described her earlier in your testimony that the child was bright and full of life, right?
Yes.
And she got that personality, she got that as a reflection from the treatment she got from her mother.
From the love of her parents.
Yeah, Z too, right?
See too.
But from her mother.
Yeah.
You said that her mother was particularly the one responsible for most of the day-to-day motherly things with the child, changing the diapers, right?
Yeah, I mean, Z changed some diapers too, obviously, but yeah, she was.
But she breastfed this child
Yes,
every
she
time,
did.
right? They did not believe in bottle feeding or
No,
formula.
she breastfed her child.
Right.
Yes, she did.
So she was up all night feeding the child when the child needed to be fed,
She was
right?
an excellent mother. I've already said that.
Yeah. So you know,
She loved her baby.
you know from being with her that, as you just said, there's no good reason why a mother would ever kill her child. You know in this case that there was no good reason why she would ever kill her child, right?
No.
Okay. So just taking you back to May when you first met her, the first time that you saw and understood the dynamic of this group relationship that Z was in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you had met him previously in Asheville, you talked about the trust and that, you didn't really understand the group dynamic at that point in time.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It was, that's kind of hard to, that's why I was so interested in their group and in their family. And so was Jennifer, this girl I was with at the time. And, that's, it's, you can talk to someone, but you need to see that type of social interaction in person to gain.
You'd never had an experience relationship-wise like that, right? You never had a polygamous plurality relationship.
I've had multiple women that I've balanced. I've done that my whole life, really. Had multiple girlfriends, if you will. But no, I had never taken the time to introduce them to each other and be like, hey, we're a family now. I'm going to actually be devoted to you as a husband and show you that level of commitment and care and love and appreciation and all these things. Even though I was never really I always showed those things to the women in my life, but never to the level of calling them my wife.
Right.
So like I say, when I heard that, I thought it was very interesting because it was kind of what I had always done anyway with plurality in women, but actually having the intimacy and the fulfillment of having a wife, which I had always had missing from my life and I really wanted. But I never wanted to just settle for one woman. And Z kind of seemed, it was just like, oh, it just like a light clicked on in my head. I was like, oh, so you have multiple wives. That's how you do that. Okay.
And like I said, you never had that relationship with multiple women in a wife type setting.
No,
right?
sir.
Right.
I have not.
So you were curious as to how that existed.
Yes, sir.
And whether or not these people all got along with each other.
Right.
Was the relationship built towards each other, were there infighting amongst some of them, right?
Yeah.
And when you first met them in May, you found that everything was, they all agreed. They got together. They got along.
They really
worked
did.
together, right?
Yeah, it was beautiful. I was inspired by it. And even when we left, I told Jennifer, I was like, I'm about to change my perspective on,
Let me show you. We're going to mark this as Defendant's Exhibit 1, Judge. This is a photograph, I believe, that was taken off of Kuwani's phone by law enforcement. You see that photograph on your screen there, sir?
Yeah.
Do you recall an instance like that in May, June at the beach?
That was pretty much like their life. Look at how happy Kuwani is. Look at her face. Look at the babies. These were just they're just happy people, just living their lives.
Does that seem to be a fair and accurate reflection of things that you exhibited with them at that time in May?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, Judge, let me show you. We'll call this one Defendant's Exhibit 2, and I'm going to see if I can.
There's Kuwani holding and feeding her baby on the beach.
Zoom
Look at
in
her
on that
face.
to make it a little bigger. Appears in that photograph, she's actually breastfeeding the child. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Same photograph, time frame. They're on the beach, obviously. Does that appear to be a representation of what they would have been like in May or June of that year?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, when I left, I told Jen, I'm doing this now. I'm going to have multiple wives one day. And she was I was like, so what do you think about that? And she's like, actually, she was like, okay. She was like, so I told her, I'm gonna bring some other women into this relationship, because she was living with me at the time. Even though I told her, and I was very clear about, that it was more of an open type of relationship, that I was not fully committed to her, that I wouldn't see other women, but she wasn't fully committed to me either. It was more an open relationship, kind of that we were both okay with that circumstance.
Yeah.
We did, even though we did live together.
Okay.
And I told her, I was like, man, we should move another girl in. And she was like, if it could work like that, then okay. This is a woman who 24 hours before, she's like, I don't know about this. We have to go see these people and see how this works too. We get down there and we see, she's like, okay.
That ultimately did not work out though with you and Jen.
No, it didn't.
Right.
That's a whole different story. So,
Judge, I will move to tender Defendant's Exhibits 1 and 2 at this time.
Any objection?
but yeah, Jen said, if it could be like that, if it could be the way that they are with each other, and they're not jealous, fighting, bickering little women, who have these, all of this stuff, you know what I'm saying? It's like the things that you would expect, the jealousy and fighting and bickering between women. It was not there.
Okay.
And we stayed for a week and we saw them in and out, and when you're around somebody for a week straight, we were really observant of them. So yeah, I can't say enough about how their family was just working in this beautiful kind of way.
All right. And then your next interaction with them together was roughly in September when you went to Connecticut.
Well, I saw them a couple times. Like I said, I remember seeing them. I saw Z in Asheville. I met her for lunch at the 12 Tribes one time over the summer. I met Kawani and her parents at the river one day
June.
in June. Yeah.
But the next extended time that you spent with them was September up at
Yeah.
Z's parents' house.
Yeah, I need to use this real quick. My nose is yes, the next time I was with them extensively was in September at Z's parents' house and Mike and Michelle Joyce's house in Bristol, Connecticut.
I'm showing you now.
I'm sorry. I'm going to object to publishing all the exhibits before they've been admitted. I don't know what else he intends to get into. The state's previously provided an exhaustive list of all of our exhibits, but I have no idea what he has on there. That
It's just photographs of her and the child during the time frame that we're
we
talking
just
about.
review whatever he's seeking to admit before we publish it to the jury.
I just don't have them printed out. They're just
It's the same ones that were used during opening.
Oh, okay. No objection to those.
All right. You withdraw your objection?
I withdraw my objection.
All
They're
right.
the same ones during opening.
All right.
this photograph, Mr. Spillers, I believe, was taken in August, so maybe slightly before your visit with them in September. But does that seem to accurately reflect how you would have seen Kawani and Ninzi at that period of time?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'll mark that as this defendant's exhibit 3, and we'll move to tend to that, I guess, as well.
No objection.
It's admitted.
And then in September, when you were in Connecticut, you were there for about 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I think you said that you stayed in your van for the most part, slept in your van while you were there?
Yeah.
Kawani, Z, Nimzi were in his parents' home,
Yeah.
right? And at that point in time, his parents knew her, knew the other women that were involved, right? They were well aware of the relationships that he had.
Yes, they were.
Okay. Did he ever talk to you about a time in which he took Kawani back to his house in Connecticut before the child was born, when they first met, and he had her living in his parents' basement?
Yeah, I do remember him talking about that, like briefly, like that's how they met or something like that. That's when they first met.
You recall him telling you that he kept her in the basement because he didn't want his parents to know about her at that time, that he
No.
took food down there to her?
Definitely not. And they definitely knew that she was there. That's ridiculous.
Okay, this would have been not September of 2020. I'm talking about before that.
Oh, yeah.
when they
But I
first
mean,
met.
dude, Michelle Joyce is not the kind of lady who has somebody in her house and doesn't know about it. That's impossible.
Okay.
So, like, that's just not our thing.
Okay.
Like the idea that, that they didn't know that he was keeping someone in her house. Like, yeah, right. Have you met her?
I have not.
Okay, well then you would know. Like, there's no way that's like,
Okay.
yeah. But no, I never heard him talk about that. But that just strikes me as like, if you knew the Joyce family, like,
You don't think that would have happened?
I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in September, though, in Connecticut, your testimony is that you begin to see her, a change in her personality, a change in her
Yeah, a radical
self.
change.
Yeah.
She struck Z when I was there. And that was just like so, like, just out of character. Like,
This is when these episodes were starting in which she would basically zone out or be in a catatonic type state.
definitely.
Is that right?
Yes.
When she was in these states, she would come out of them and not have any recollection of what just happened. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Um,
And I witnessed this many times.
Yes.
Especially because it developed even more when I, into October and through November, it was severe. I've
The-
never seen anything like it.
Was she telling you the type of things that she was hearing or seeing during these delusional spells? Would she tell you that she was hearing voices?
Well, not really like that. No, she was more expressing it as just like this, like aggressive, manic, like thing. She would talk about all kinds of stuff, but it was like really hard to, and I was listening attentively and with care and respect for Kawani when she was expressing these things, and it's like certain things that she would say kind of made sense sometimes. Like she would talk about like. Gosh, I can't even remember these things specifically. Like she would talk about like evil in the world and like which there is a lot of evil in the world.
Sure.
So it's not like everything that she said, but some of the things that she was saying were completely like.
But she was expressing to you that this was evil that she felt like was directed at her, right?
Definitely.
Not something that she was just talking about.
But just like an ambivalent force in the room as well, too.
Yeah.
Like not just like an indirect, like just the presence of evil.
Yeah, she sensed this.
Yes.
It's not like she was mad at the war in Israel or something. She was feeling a presence of a body or a presence of an entity that was coming towards her or directed towards her, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, she was.
This was so profound to you when you saw her in September and such a difference in how she was in May. You recall talking to Z about this and telling him that she needed to get some help?
Yeah, I did actually. I was like, dude, I don't know, but I mean, I was trying to say like maybe she should go to an institution or something like that. But at the same time, I've never been to one of these institutions.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And Z has a lot of familiarity with these things.
You said you've told us in your conversation we had with you Saturday, your sister has some relation to social work, right?
My sister has her master's degree in social work and behavioral sciences, and she works as a counselor. And I have a very close relationship with my sister. So we talk about these things, and I pride myself in being an intellectual and having the ability for divergent thinking and to, gain objective understanding for concepts rather quickly, So I've always excelled and been in the top of my class kind of guy. So I speak with Chelsea, my sister's name is Chelsea. I speak with Chelsea, and I've spoken with her about these things, and, we spoke a lot about Kalani when this was happening with her.
And I'm not going to hold you to an expert in psychology by any means or psychiatric issues, but you believed, and I think you even told Detective Cruz this in your interview, that you believe that, in fact, Kuwani was suffering from specific disorders such as bipolar or schizophrenia, that type of thing, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think that. I do think that some kind of individual could, but it's like these things came on very suddenly. So it's like I was telling the state earlier in my testimony, and that's why I didn't really push it too far when Z said that he didn't want her to be institutionalized, because this wasn't like how she was all the time. So so perhaps I'm incorrect, because to diagnose somebody with schizophrenia means that they have schizophrenia, not that they have schizophrenic-like episodes. Do you understand the differential here? It's like, that's how I'm viewing it now. And honestly, at that time, I had just witnessed Nimsy breathe her last breaths, and, I'm trying to save Kawani's life. So, it's like, I don't even really remember that interview with Tiana Cruz myself. There was like a lot of trauma.
You were still in shock to some degree about what you just
I'm still
gone through,
traumatized
right?
by this to this day.
Yeah.
This is like a huge thing for me to deal with.
But Z's response to you reaching out to him about what you were saying and your concerns, he did not want her treated.
He didn't want to put her, well, his expressions were very clear. He didn't want to put her in an institution where she would get less care and less time and consideration than what she was getting from him and from her sisters.
He didn't want pharmaceuticals
and he
for
didn't
her.
want her to become some brain dead pharmaceutical girl, And
he didn't want that for Kuwani, but he also didn't want that for Nimsy, right?
Thank you. Yes, that's where I was going. She's breastfeeding this baby,
Yeah.
and he didn't want that, and he didn't want her to be institutionalized because she has this. He was trying to keep their family together, man. And I respected him for that, and I respected him for trying to do it organically and without drugs.
So let's talk a little bit about this CBD here. That was State's Exhibit 87. I think when you testified earlier, I thought you testified that you had bought that from a store, but maybe I misunderstood. You got it from a friend of yours.
I bought it from an individual, a woman who's in her 50s, who works in the CBD industry.
Is her name Kylie Cross?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this appears like in this jar, it appears to be something that was homemade or manufactured by someone and put in that substance. Is that fair?
I'll tell you what I was told.
Okay.
I was told that was manufactured in a large quantity, and that it was processed in a legal type circumstance, and that it was legal to be sold in stores, but it was excess that she had access to.
Okay, but you don't, that's how you got it, right?
That's exactly how I got it.
You were told what it was, you were told it was CBD, but other than that, you have no reason to understand that it's CBD or anything else, correct?
I'm just going by what I was told, yes.
Okay. And you had used some of that yourself.
Yes, sir.
And I think your testimony earlier was you didn't think that it had much of a effect on you.
It really didn't.
Using it for your shoulder, I think.
Yeah, I got a bad. I have a bad neck and a bad rib. I did jiu-jitsu for years and years.
And it didn't really give you any relief.
It did in a way. It did a little bit, but I discontinued my use of CBD.
You didn't have any side effects from it, such as delusions or paranoia or concerns like that, right?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. But you definitely saw what you believe was an increase in paranoia and delusions from Kuwani that occurred at the time she was taking this substance as well.
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you believe that the CBD or whatever this stuff was causing her symptoms to get worse?
Not at first. When she first started taking it, I gave it to him in September. And then that only progressed until that was way later, and she was the one who was saying that, because I don't, her delusions, it was it's hard for me to differentiate, was this actually, but she was the one who started saying that.
She was telling you that she was having concerns that this substance was causing.
She was telling us, and then Z started to pull it back and stop giving it to her.
Okay. Ultimately, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, the nature of this relationship and the control, and I don't mean control in a necessarily a negative way, but the patriarchal structure of this family, right?
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, Z had the final decision about whatever was happening in this family, right?
I mean, yeah, for the most part, but these women were heard. You know, it's not like these were not oppressed,
Sure. I mean,
silenced women, and by no means. In fact, very much the opposite. Like I say, you know, he wakes up every day. It's like we want to talk. He wants them to talk. They were encouraged to speak. They were encouraged to speak their minds. They were encouraged to tell how they were feeling. You know, so he could be a better man.
But if Z felt like the CBD was something he wanted to have her use, he would be the one to say, let's use that.
Well,
right?
he was vehemently opposed to it at first, but she talked him into it,
And he did agree to it.
and he
right?
finally agreed to
Okay.
it. Yeah.
But if he had not agreed to that, she would not have been able to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the nature of a relationship,
Yeah.
you know, unless two people are in agreement. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that he would have, just like he didn't want her to use pharmaceuticals, you know, like I said, she's breastfeeding a child. and
Did
she's-
you ever tell him that he needed to stop giving her the CBD?
No, I did not.
Never.
No, I didn't.
Now again, this time frame of September when you're in Connecticut, October when you're in Virginia with them, despite the concerns you're seeing for her declining mental state, her treatment of Hannah was still 100% top-notch motherly
It
treatment.
really was.
Right.
Like, it really was. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times where, you know, she was so out of it and having like these like episodes of panic and discomfort and violent aggression, you know, where, you know, I felt like she wasn't her best self as far as like giving Hannah all of the attention that the child needed. But that was uncommon. You know, that was only like a few times. Because, you know, it's like when she's manic and like screaming and pulling her hair out, you know, it's like there's a
Yeah.
baby in the room.
When
Like,
she was in that state, she obviously couldn't be a good mother.
there were a couple
to the
times where
child, right?
I had to hold the baby because, you know, she was like, Z was like, here, hold the baby. You know, like, because Kawani's like becoming aggressive and violent and screaming at the top of her lungs in public places and, you know.
But
like-
nothing that she ever did during those times, nothing that happened while she was in those delusional states or those paranoia states, nothing she did was ever violent, aggressive, or harmful to NZ.
No. Very much the opposite.
Okay.
Still.
All right. Now, when you were in North Carolina, this is, I guess, late October into November, when you got back to North Carolina where you lived, right?
Yeah.
Candler. That's not, it's like a suburb of Asheville, is that right?
Yes.
Peggy, how far does Peggy live from you?
In Candler?
Yeah.
To South Asheville was like 20 minutes.
Okay, but your house from Peggy's house is same distance, or
What do you mean?
where you live versus where Peggy lives? How far apart do y'all live?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Peggy lives in South Asheville,
Okay.
off Overlook Road.
Okay,
I live in Candler, 41 Oakdale was my address.
okay.
And I would say it'd take, you know, 15, 20 minutes to get over there to South Asheville.
So when y'all were in North Carolina, where was the,
Yeah, basically like both places, but I let my house out to them. I let them stay at my place.
Okay.
When we came back from Virginia Beach. They stayed at Peggy's for a little while, and then Z asked me, and we stayed there, and then Gamiana started doing the dark therapy there at my house. So at that point, they were staying at Peggy's. And that's where she was during the events that happened on November 25th.
Yeah.
And that's why she wasn't there, because she was doing a dark therapy, like I say, for her own pursuit of like, you know, a higher vibrational frequency.
we'll come back to that November 25th incident in just a minute.
Okay.
But at that point in time, they were staying at Peggy's house. Is that
Yes.
fair to say? Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the group dynamic and some of the stuff that we're practicing. And you talked on this earlier. This was a patriarchal driven dynamic, right?
Right. Well, Z's like the center. He's like the, you know, he's the man of the house and
He calls himself a prophet, does he not?
a prophet.
Yeah.
I don't know that Z would use that word to describe himself.
You never heard him call himself a prophet?
I've never heard him call himself a prophet.
You never heard him call himself Prophet Elihu?
No.
No? If he told Detective Cruz that when he was giving her his name in an interview, would that surprise you?
Eliyahu?
Yeah.
Eliyahu's his given middle name. That means Elliot. That's a Hebrew name.
Okay. But if he called himself prophet, that would surprise you.
I mean, that kind of would surprise me that he would use that word.
Do you recall him talking about, at times, Z or any of these women in the group?
Yeah.
Do you recall them talking about the CIA coming after them and out to get them?
Yeah, there was some talk about that.
Okay. Part of the idea of this trust system, as you talked about, was keeping your property away from the government.
Sure.
You have a, let's say, healthy distrust of the government. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah,
Sure.
You part of the trust idea is that it insulates your property and your income from taxes.
Yes, it does.
Right.
No, that's a fact.
And at the time that you were with this group from May to December, Z didn't have a job, did he?
No.
Nobody else in the family had a job, right? None of the wives had jobs.
No.
Kawani's job was being a mother to this child, right?
That's right.
Do you know what source of income they were living off of?
I know that all of their finances are private through their trust. I mean,
But you don't know how they got them.
I mean that's.
Do you know anything about him submitting loans to the government during COVID, PPP money?
Yeah, I do remember there being some talk about that, but
Setting loans up in the name of a religious organization that they got money from?
okay.
I mean, are you aware of that?
I mean, I remember them doing that, yeah, but I mean, I didn't really know all the details about that, but I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember there being them using the trust.
What about also this belief in this group that there are only 168,000 souls that are alive in the world? You familiar with that?
Yeah, that's not unique to them.
Is that something that you hold as well?
Is my belief what's on debate here? How does this relate back to? I'm trying to understand
Just
where.
trying to understand the nature of this group
Okay, the nature of the group in relation to the death of the child, or
in the relation to what they believed.
okay, what does that have to do with the death of the child?
Mr. Spillers, I get to ask you questions about what I would like to ask you questions about, as long as they're generally relevant.
Okay,
I'm asking you
trying to
questions
understand how
about
this
the
is
nature
generally
of this group.
Trying to understand how this is generally relevant.
I'm trying to understand why somebody believes that there's only 168,000 alive people in the world.
I personally believe that there's only 500 million bodies in this place, that the population records are all lies, and that there are much less people than there are now, and that there are only about 500 million people instead of 7 billion. So it's like when you go to New York City, and there's this is why I believe that. And so when you go to places like New York or San Francisco, or you go to any major city really, all you have to do is count. So we're talking about a population demographic, and we're talking about a specific number of people that they say there's 2.5 million people on Manhattan Island.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is go and count the people. All you have to do is drive by and look at the traffic. All you have to do is do some mathematical equations, which would really lead you to believe that there are significantly less people than what they say.
Well,
So
let me put
what
it
does
to
that
you.
have to do with MC?
It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with MC, sir, but I'm going to ask you questions about it for a reason.
Okay.
Let me put it to you this way. You're from the South. You grew up in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Born and raised there. You're familiar with the idea of college football, right?
Sure.
This weekend, there's going to be a football game between the University of Tennessee and the University of Georgia in Athens, and there's going to be about 96,000 people that fill a stadium. Do you not believe there's 96,000 people that are going to be sitting in that stadium watching a football game?
I mean, if you see them, then they're there. That doesn't mean that there's 7 billion people in the world. The population charts and the demographics and the census records, I think, are a lie, much like a lot of other things. There's a lot of lies in the government, sir. So, yeah, I mean, how much of these lies would you like to expose here in this room? How much fact-based information are we going to discuss?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of that in a second. When we get to this idea about the polygamy relationships that he had with these 3 women, there was a 4th wife that he had previously. Is that right?
Yes.
You're aware of her named Gabriella Kuykendall?
Yes.
You ever met Gabriella Kuykendall?
No. I haven't.
Were you aware that when she had a child with Mr.
I don't object to anything involving psychotic relevant.
Relevance is your objection? You want to respond?
I think it's relevant, Judge. He talked earlier about the fact that Z had 4 wives, and we're talking about 3 wives here. And I think it's relevant to his understanding of how this group dynamic worked.
He's already testified he never met her.
I'm not asking him.
All right, overrule the objection.
You're aware of who Gabriella Kuykendall is, right?
Yes.
You're aware that she had a child with Z, right?
Yes.
You're aware that she left him in the middle of the night with the child and basically ran away from him, right?
Okay.
Matter of fact, it took place at the same house where this incident happened on December 8th of 2020. Did you know that?
No.
It happened at Jerry's house.
Okay.
Part of what Z was trying to do with this group was to grow this group, right? He was constantly looking for other women to bring into his group here, right?
Are we not all constantly seeking the companionship of compatible individuals?
I'm asking about Z right now.
Okay.
Wasn't he always trying to talk to other women about bringing them into the group as well?
I mean, sure. Yeah.
Part of what he ultimately wanted to do was to have multiple children with multiple wives as well. Is that right?
That's what I want to.
Okay. In fact, right now, Anna
Yeah, there's
just had a
there's a
child,
beautiful baby in this world that Connie just birthed. Yeah, she did.
and Shaylee is pregnant today, right?
Shayla's about to have one too. Yep.
His mentality is to grow his religious following, right?
You just used the word religion, which I feel like is inappropriate.
Okay, his mentality is to grow his following.
His mentality is to find like-minded individuals to participate with each other, as is mine,
But
and that's what attracts us to each other.
But Mr.
We-
Spillers, he and you don't look for like-minded individuals. You and he look for strays, like castaway dogs on the side of the road. Isn't that true?
That's really ridiculous.
Isn't that not what you told him in a phone call with him at the jail just a few days ago?
Is it?
I'm asking you.
I don't know. I mean,
You and he have not talked about treating these women like strays? Finding these women that you can bring into your group and treat them like strays? That's not a comment that you made in a phone call?
I don't know. Maybe, and maybe it was made in sarcasm. You know,
Maybe
like,
it was.
Like, I don't know. I don't remember every single word of every single thing that I've said. But no, I've never treated women in my life like that.
Well,
I've
you
never
definitely treat them as submissive individuals, right?
No, I treat them as
Women are subservient to you, right?
He can explain his answer.
So yeah. So what's your question again?
I said at first that you treat them as submissive individuals.
No, I don't.
They're
I think-
subservient to you, though, right?
I think that women should be in a place that is yeah, sure.
In servitude of the man.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
Meaning that Benjamin or Z or Brian Joyce, whoever he is, he controls what they do.
No,
And if they
I
don't
mean,
do
there's
what he wants, they can get out, right?
Of course.
Right? He controls what they wear, right?
So you're asking.
Yes or no?
You're asking me.
Yes or no
I don't
first?
know the answer to this question.
He controls what they eat, right?
We have already discussed that there is a standard, and this is the same thing that it is with me and women that I've had in my life since then. Since I've had in my entire life. When I've been a vegetarian, women who come into my life they're vegetarian, or you cannot be together.
Right.
Yeah. So
If-
you're manipulating this into a control thing when it's just a standard that's set that can be avoided at any time.
If Kawani wanted to go have a hamburger at Wendy's, he'd kick her out of the car, right?
That's really a petty and childish way to describe something, and I mean your rhetoric is utterly offensive. But no, I mean, why would she want to have? What would motivate her to eat an animal? She's the one who's telling me.
Maybe she really didn't believe in all of that.
Maybe. I mean, why not?
You testified earlier that she didn't really get to talk to her parents much, right?
Well, she was raped by her parents when she was younger and abused by them, according to her.
My question, sir, is she didn't talk to her parents much, right?
She did from time to time.
Are you aware there were times where Z would take her phone from her and she wouldn't have access to her phone to make calls to people?
Not when I was around.
Never saw that.
Never. I never saw him limit them like that. I mean, Shaylee, like, they still do things, you know, independently, like, if you want to use that word.
His control extended to you too, right? He told you could never touch her.
Yeah, that's a very common orthodox thing, that men do not touch each other's wives, and I respect that.
Well, I'm not suggesting that men should touch each other's wives in any other sexual way. I'm just, a handshake. You couldn't even give her a handshake.
Why would I want to? Why would I want to touch another man's wife?
You started drinking urine because of him.
I started drinking urine because Peggy Schindler told me about it, and I did my research online and did some self-edification. Perhaps you should do the same.
But Peggy Schindler, I'm not drinking my urine, sir. Peggy Schindler got that information from him, right?
Did she? I don't know.
I'm asking you.
Who told me about it? I don't know.
She knew him.
Yeah, I mean, so what? Like, so there's like millions of people who drink their urine. There's like forums online with, tons of individuals, and this has become way more mainstream. And now there's like all kinds. Like I say, I mentioned Troy Casey, and I'd like to drop his name again because he's like a really prominent influencer online, and